Welcome to Queries, Qualms, and Quirks, the twice-a-month podcast that asks published authors to share their successful query letter and discuss their journey from first spark to day of publication. I am your host, author Sarah Nicolas, and literary agent Sarah N. Fisk. Jocelyn Rish is a writer and filmmaker who loves researching weird and wonderful animals and sharing what she learns. Her first book was Battle of the Butts, about 10 animals that do weird things with their butts. Her next book moved to the other end with Battle of the Brains, about 10 animals with mind-blowing brain abilities. She lives in South Carolina with her adorable dog. So please welcome Jocelyn to the show. Hello.
Hi, Sarah. Thanks for having me. I'm so glad to be here.
Yeah, thanks for coming on. So we're going to talk about your journey to publication, and we're going to start by going all the way back to the beginning. When did you first start getting interested in writing? And then how long did it take before you started getting serious about pursuing publication?
All right. Well, if we want to go back to the beginning, we're going to go way back. Now, I was always one of those girls with the book in a hand and the backup book in her purse, but I actually never thought about being a writer. That was not one of the things that occurred to me. That wasn't something, I don't know. It was just, it wasn't something I thought regular people did. It was something, fancy people did. I don't know. So, but it turns out when I look back, there were some signposts along the way. So like way back in sixth grade, so there was a contest for writing a story or writing, I guess, an essay about shopping wisely. Wisely was the word. And I ended up winning. I was one of the 10 winners in the entire state of South Carolina. And I got to meet the South Carolina governor. There was a big fancy to-do at the governor's mansion. I met the South Carolina governor and I won a $50 savings bond. That's the first time I've ever won any money for my writing. But again, still didn't dawn on me. This is something you could do. Then fast forward to ninth grade, in English class, we're doing a unit on creative writing. And so the English teacher gave us various prompts and stuff and kind of listed what we wanted. And I wrote this very dark and gory story because that's what I like. So I wrote a dark and gory story. He ended up reading it out loud to the class. He's like, y'all have to hear this story. And so he read it, but he didn't tell anybody who wrote it. And so he asked after it was done, everyone was like, amazing. And then he's like, who wrote it? And then everyone's naming off, the kind of quirky guys and the guys are into that heavy metal and the dark stuff. And then my crush, who happened to be in the English class, he's like, it was Jocelyn. I know it was Jocelyn. I was like, hey, how did he know that? Because I didn't think he even knew I existed. But he was right. It was me. And my English teacher came and he plopped it on my desk and everyone was like, how did she write that story? She's so quiet and doesn't say a word and is so shy. And that was
you always got to look out for the quiet ones.
I know, exactly, right? And so that was my first brush with kind of really feeling like people are like, wow, still did not click, did not do the things it's supposed to do, that this is where you're meant to be. And so went on high school, college, not a whiff that I wanted to be a writer. I was a psychology major in college. My minor was computer science. And so when I graduated, I started working for a software company and kind of climbed the ladder really quickly there. And at kind of my mid-late 20s, I was miserable. Like one of those things like dry heaving on the way to work, miserable. I hated it so much. And so as I sat there every day, my mind was just off, like on these stories, creating stories in my head. I'm like, it finally hit me. I'm like, wait a minute. Maybe this is something I should think about a little bit more. So I signed up for some writing classes at the local college. And then in 2004, so now we're like 20 years ago for real, 2004, I signed up for the Writing for Children and Teenagers at the Institute of Children's Literature and worked through that. I was learning all about the process. And in 2006, I completed my first Nano, and that was so exciting. I had a novel. A friend had told me about Nano, and I did it. And it was amazing. And I was just riding this high. And so, now I'd been taking some classes. I had some written stuff under my belt. I'm like, okay, I think it's time to take it to the next level and figure what this whole publishing thing is about. It's the next step. So I was like, what, how?
That's perfect. Because that's the next question is, how did you learn more about the publishing industry? Like how to query, how to go about it, everything like that.
Mm-hmm. Well, I had been going to my library, going to bookstores and gotten some of those, big old chunky books about, with the market guides and that kind of thing. But it's so overwhelming. And it was like, I don't know what I'm supposed to do. This is back in snail mail days too, right?
Right.
And so I guess it was in early 2007, my aunt, my mom's she's always been a huge supporter of my writing. And so she had found a pamphlet in a bookstore about a day-long writing conference where she lived, which is about 3 hours away from me. And so she's like, why don't you come up here, stay with me and go to this writing conference? And it was a kidlit conference too. It wasn't just a regular writing conference. It was a kidlit conference. Cause at that point I had I went to YA, young adult that was my thing. I love reading it. So I figured I want to write it. So we got it there and, it was one of those things where you paid for critique. So I had submitted a story about roaches, weirdly enough, because I was terrified of roaches. And it was this kind of like funky story about roaches. And, it was a story that one of the classes I'd taken at the local college, the instructor just said, wow. She's like, I read this. She's like, I just knew you were a writer. So I'm like, oh, this is so cool. I'll get in front of an agent. It's going to be the best thing ever. And so, I went there and it was early in the morning, sat down with him and he was very excited about it. He's like, he had a lot of great things to say about a couple things. He's like, he probably need to tweak. He's like, now, would you mind? He's like, I'm doing a session later today. Would you mind if I use this as my example? And I'm like, well, this sounds pretty awesome. Okay. Yes, please. Let's do that. So I go in there and I go to the session and we sit down. He decides, this is when American Idol was super popular. And he decided he was Simon Cowell from American Idol and proceeded to rip apart, just shredded it. Just in the most sarcastic, cruel way that you could. And I'm just sitting there and so I'm hearing people around me say, oh my gosh, I hope but poor writer. Oh my gosh, this is so horrible. Like, I hope she's not in here. And I'm like, yeah, I totally am. So yeah, that was super fun. And, so that was kind of my first experience with traditional publishing. So it was awesome. I loved it.
Oh my God. I know no one can see me, but I'm literally just sitting with my head in my hands.
It was the best thing ever. Yeah. And so, it was in a way, I guess it was good because, it just put you into the boiling hot water.
Nothing would ever be that bad.
It's going to be hard to be worse than that, right? So, and I was able to laugh about it mostly at the time. I didn't cry, which is good. Cause I'm kind of a crier, especially when I get mad. And I was mad because he had led me to believe he really enjoyed it and really liked it. That's what he said during the critique. And, he even kind of afterwards, I kind of went up to, because he had my hard copy. That's one of his hard copies. He had my hard copy with all his notes on it that he was supposed to give to me from my critique that I had paid for. And so I went up to him, I'm like, can I get my notes? He's like, well, I hope it wasn't too bad. I just wanted to make it entertaining. And I was like,
oh my God. I will point out though, for those of you who weren't around this time period in publishing, this was a thing that agents did is they snarkily critiqued query letters and stuff on Twitter and everything. And, now it's taboo. You're not supposed to do that. But that was definitely a thing that people did back then.
Yeah. Yeah. But I will say a lot ended up coming out of that was good because I had never heard about SCBWI before. And so SCBWI had a booth or something. So I learned about SCBWI and I found, a local critique group through that. I got all the literature for SCBWI, found a local critique group. That was a group I attended for I think 7 years. We stuck together, and now one of my best friends is one of the women I met there. And so a lot of good things came of it, including the trial by fire.
Goodness. All right. So then what happened? Can you break down for us your journey from then to signing your book contract?
So luckily that did not send me away forever with my tail tucked between though it felt like it at the time. But, I just continued along. I had a whole bunch of short stories. I kept participating in Nano year after year. And so I was submitting short stories to contests. I won one finally and it was exciting. And I got several $100s and it was published and it was exciting. My Nano novel, I entered one of my Nano novels, I kept entering the Amazon Breakthrough Novel Contest from, again, way back when and kept making it, pretty far along. I never made it to the final rounds, but enough that I was getting some really good feedback from judges and stuff. So that was great. And you just kind of plugging along. I was doing kind of the right things, but not as aggressively as I should be. I started blogging at that point. So I wasted a lot of time. I don't want to say wasted because I met a lot of lovely people, but I was spending more time blogging when I should have been writing and getting my stuff out there. And part of the blog, I entered a lot of contests for pitch contests and that first flying contest, first page contest. And I kept doing really well on those. And I got a lot of contact with agents and all of them were like, this is great. But they'd read the full and be like, I really love it. But it was always, I really love it. But it was, so I was always getting felt like I was getting close, but never getting all the way. And so I just kept doing that rather than like taking the plunge that I should have taken, because it was such a small sample of agents and opinions and stuff. And so I just kept churning rather than moving forward, I guess, kind of just turning the sand in the same little area rather than pushing forward. But in 2013, it was my second nano and the one my churner that I've been working on and off on for ages. So that was my 2007 nano. And so in 2013, so that many years later,
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it actually won the SCBWI Work in Progress grant for contemporary novel for young people. And I was like, that's it. You know, I've arrived. This is going to be it. And so right after that, Pitch Wars came along. So I submitted to Pitch Wars. And at that point, that was when you had alternates that the mentors could pick alternates. And luckily my alternate was one of those that went all the way in. You know, she read the whole thing. And so I went, whole round revisions with her. She was excellent with Fiona. She was excellent. And I got some interest in the showcase. And so, again, I just, every time the way things happen, I'm like, this is it. And then, I got, I think several full requests, and one of those turned into an R&R. And so I spent a lot of time in the R&R, which I did not feel in my heart was right, but I did it because it was an R&R from a really great reason. So I spent a lot of time working on that. And then she read it. She's like, thanks, but no thanks. And so I felt like I wasted, and I knew it too. I knew it, that her suggestions, I knew it wasn't right. And that's one of the hard lessons you learn, that my gut knew, my heart knew, and my head's like, oh, she's so good. You have to do what she says. So, it's just those kind of things over and over again. And so then I tried again, Pitch Wars again, same novel, which again, I should not have done. I should have had something new to go in, but I got I was alternate again, another mentor that was super awesome. And, she, took us both along the same way. She did the same thing for both, her mentee and for me. And all three of us became very close. So that was a lovely experience. And the 2014 group was a super close group. We have a Facebook group and to this day, 10 years later, we're still exchanging news. And so that was it was one of the best things I did for creating my community. These group of writers who are supporting each other and just being there for each other. And so that was great. But same thing, some requests, but nothing fully materialized. And I think at that point is when I finally got brave enough to send out a whole bunch of queries. I queried almost every YA agent available at that time. And, it just ended up, it was no dice. So, then I finally broke free one day, and I wrote a middle grade novel. And I was really excited about that. And so I finally queried it in 2017. And again, lots of requests. No dice. Wasn't there. So it's 2018. Now we finally got into 2018. And I read a tweet on Twitter, middle of the night. I was on Twitter when I should have been doing literally anything else. And I saw a tweet, and it was a picture of a manatee, the cutest picture of a manatee, a little pudgy little manatee. And it said, did you know manatees control their buoyancy by a cycle of endless sporting? That's a fact now. That's what the little graphic said. And I was like, what? I love manatees forever. And I've never heard that before. And so I Googled it. And not only is it true, but as I Googled it, I found all these other interesting butt facts put up about other animals. It was BuzzFeed little articles and Wired articles that had this little snippet about the manatee fact with other funny butt facts. Is what I'm like, this is the coolest thing ever. I was like, okay, well, I have to do something with this. And so then started to be well, I don't write picture books, because clearly this is going to be a picture book. This is not going to be, YA for sure. I don't write picture books. And I definitely do not write nonfiction. So what am I going to do? So I different things went around. I thought about writing a little fiction story about a manatee who's embarrassed because he keeps farting and learns his lesson that it's, just thing after thing. And I'm like, no, I think it has to be nonfiction. So I get all these other animals in here. And so I finally hit on the fact that I want it to be a reality show. Going back all the way back to Simon Cowell, right? And so I was trying to brainstorm all these things American butts and butt idols and all these things where it could be the animals are showing showing off their talents, through their butts, through these reality shows. And finally, I hit on Battle of the Bands being Battle of the Butts. And I was like, it was like one of these moments I knew that was it. As soon as I got the title, I didn't even have a book at that point. As soon as I hit Battle of the Butts, I knew that was it. And so, trying to figure out what that looked like and wrote it. And there you go.
And you went on this mission with that.
Yeah. And it was great because I had the idea and, I signed up right after I had the idea, because again, I knew nothing about nonfiction. I knew nothing about research or any of that stuff. And, when the universe reaches out to help you, I got an email from the Highlights Foundation that they were doing a class called The Nuts and Bolts of Science Writing and a retreat. And so I'm like, this seems like something to be very helpful for me right now. So I applied and I got a partial scholarship and I went up there and it was the best thing. It was I learned how to do research because I had no idea. I learned, but I had already done I had the first 3 sections. There's 10 animals. I had done the first 3 because that's what I had to do to, take it to there was I needed something to turn in. And, Jen Swanson and Miranda Paul loved it. They were the 2. They loved it. And the editor that was there, Sam Gentry, she loved it. And she's like, go home, finish this, send it to me. I love it. And I'm like, gosh, she's a big editor. She wants it. I gotta go do this. So it was everything I needed to lift me up and know I was on the right path. And so came home, finished it in just frenzy of writing. And, so I queried and, I think I was without a month of querying, I had my first offer. And so I ended up with 3 offers for it. I finally accepted, my author with, Tracy Marchini was with Bookends is who I accepted. And then, she had no edits at all. And so it was in the new year. So as soon as the new year started, she sent it out. And by mid-March, we had a preempt offer. We'd had several editors that were interested and we, got the preempt from Running Press Kids. And so we took it and it was just, after all these years of struggling to see it go so fast, I never thought my, debut would be a book about animal butts, but there you
go. How could you predict that?
Yeah.
All right, cool. It is time for the first cue of the podcast.
Oh, okay.
Your successful query letter for it.
Okay. All right. Dear Agent, did you know manatees swim using farts? Or that wombats can crush enemy skulls with their rumps? Or that some turtles breathe through their derrieres? If butts make you giggle, then you'll laugh out loud while learning about a variety of animals with fantastic fannies. Battle of the Butts is a 6,400-word nonfiction picture book for older kids in the vein of the funny and educational books by Rebecca L. Johnson and Jess Keating. It presents 10 animals that have weird and wonderful posterior powers, explains what the power does to help the animal and how each power works. While giggling and oohing their way through the pages, readers will learn about biology, chemistry, and physics. So it's a win for kids and their parents and teachers. After reading about each animal, fish that communicate through farts, beetles that shoot burning chemicals out of their bones, kids are asked to rate its posterior power. Then, at the end of the book, they will decide on a winner and crown the ultimate king of keisters. I've been published in Highlights Magazine and the Post and Courier and have won several awards, including the SCBWI Work in Progress grant for my YA novel, the Highlights Fiction Contest, and the South Carolina Fiction Prize. Additionally, 2 of my short scripts won production grants and are now award-winning short films. Previously a freelance writer for the MTV News website, I am now the interview coordinator for the Adventures in YA Publishing website. Thank you for your time and consideration, Jocelyn Rish.
All right, thank you. So how has your experience been since signing that first contract? Especially let us know if anything really surprised you along the way.
Yeah, it was one of those things you hear people say all the time about how slow publishing is. You just really get it here and there. So I had the offer in mid-March and Butts didn't get published till November of 2021. And that was, that was normal. That wasn't anything excessive. I didn't get the contract to sign until September. So from March to September before I got the contract, we didn't bring the illustrator on board. We didn't even have an illustrator until November. I'm it had been almost a year at that point and we didn't have an illustrator. And then I couldn't announce until January 2020. And it's so funny. I was looking today in my Facebook memories, 4 years ago was the day the Publishers Weekly, Publishers Marketplace, whatever. The announcement came out. So it was today, 4 years ago, that I was finally allowed to tell everyone about Butts. So, it takes forever. So that was what I didn't get it. You hear it, but you just don't get it, how long it takes. So that was like really the only thing. I mean, as well as weird because it was surprising, even though you'd heard it a million times, it was still a surprise because you feel it. You feel it in your soul. You're just ready to stick a book in your hands. But other than that, working with my editor was great. She's awesome. Allison Cohen at Running Press Kids. She's amazing. She didn't have many changes. There's a couple places we, kind of, went it down because it was dense and it still is, even though it's published, it's still pretty dense for a picture book crowd, but she helped me find some places I was like, do they really need to know that level of detail? So things like that, but it was a pretty easy process and, she was great. And, it's been one of those things that it's been a very weird ride with this in general, because I've had a lot of personal things go weird. So 20 years I've been working at this almost. And then, so the day my contract comes in to sign for real, finally in September, I had to put one of my dogs to sleep. So I'm waiting at home for the vet to come. The vet was doing one of the at-home visits. And I'm sitting there just kind of loving her on her, kissing her. And I look at my phone bloops and I look and it's the contract. And I'm like, are you serious? And so then fast forward to July of 2020 and my second dog had to be put down. And I'm at home crying my eyes out, email dings, and it's the illustrations are in. The first time I get to see the illustrations for the book.
Goodness.
Okay. And so that was the weirdest thing because I'm like, they were delightful. David Crichton-Custer is the illustrator. He lives in New Zealand and he is amazing. They're hilarious and cute and adorable. I mean, it's just, they were so perfect. I was like, I would have been sobbing anyway, looking at them and seeing, him bringing everything to life, but then this added thing. And this is like almost even worse. So I hesitate to share it, but, in June of this year or 2023, I guess my dad passed away. It was an accident and it was pretty traumatic. And I got home from the hospital and I found out that Battle of the Butts had won the Towner Award.
Oh my gosh.
From the Washington Library Association. So it's like,
the publishing world does not care what's happening in your personal life.
I know, I don't want anything good else to happen with Butts, honestly, because everything seems to be tied with something horribly traumatic. So I was, it's like kind of was very downer to share, but it shows that, the publishing life goes on. And then you kind of, in a single day, you can have the highest highs and the lowest lows. And you just kind of have to roll with it.
Yeah. All right. It is time for the quick round. I call it author DNA. Are you a pantser or a plotter?
Pantser.
Do you tend to be an overwriter or an underwriter?
Overwriter.
Do you prefer to write in the morning or at night?
Night. Deep in the middle of the night. I'm a total vampire.
When you start a new project, do you typically start with a character, plot, or concept, or something else first?
Concept. It's always a concept.
Do you prefer coffee or tea?
Coffee.
When writing, do you prefer silence or some kind of sound?
Oh, silence. It has to be so quiet.
When it comes to the first draft, are you a get it down kind of person or a get it right kind of person?
I'm a little of both because if I'm in the groove, I'm just typing as fast as I can, get it down. But if I'm struggling, then it becomes I pick at every single word as it drips out. So a little both.
What tools or software do you use to draft?
I'm a total Word girl from way back. Since I'm old school.
Do you prefer drafting or revising more?
Whichever one I'm not doing at the minute. So if I'm drafting, I just wish I already had words there to fix. If I'm revising, I want the rush of drafting. So.
Do you write in sequential order or do you hop around?
Sequential.
And then final quick round question. Are you an extrovert or an introvert?
Extreme introvert. I'll probably need a nap after chatting with you.
Okay. Well, it's almost bedtime. Well, not for you. Not for me either. I'm also on my own.
Yeah.
All right. It's time for the second Q of the podcast. What were some of the worries that you had on your journey? And do you feel like they were realized or you overcame them or how did they shake out?
Yeah. I'm someone who struggled with anxiety my whole life. I think that's a common thread among many writers. Very, very anxious. So pretty much everything has been a qualm or a worry. But I think the biggest one is something I kind of alluded to earlier is the fact that putting off the querying for real. I just kept dabbling, like, what do you call it? The productive procrastination? Is that it? That I was like doing those contests and those blog giveaways. And so my work was getting in front of some people. And so I felt like that was enough because some people were seeing it. But I was scared to put my work out there seriously, because if I took the final step and started querying and didn't get an agent immediately, then of course I was a total failure. And all those years of effort were a total waste. And so I just kept putting it off. But I finally got to the point, I'm like, this is ridiculous. You're not going to progress if you don't actually query for real. And so, I finally put it off. And so I think if I had done that earlier, things would have progressed faster, because one, I would have gotten the feedback much, that once you get all the rejections, okay, no one's taking it. You got to move on. And so instead of just dabbling and fixing and, tweaking instead of like major rewrites, just tweakings that aren't making a difference. I think if I'd gotten the full round of rejections very early on, then I could have moved on earlier. But I don't know that I would have moved on to nonfiction. That was a much different journey. So, where would I be? Who knows? And I think, and then once I got it out there and got the rejections, like, it hurts. Of course it hurts. You hate hearing it, but it did not destroy me. I was, still there. I could still, move forward, and I could keep going, and I knew I needed to keep going. And so I think if I'd done that years earlier, who knows where you'd be, but I think I could have pushed myself harder in the beginning.
All right. It is time for the third cue. Do you have any writing quirks? Is there anything about your writing process that is kind of different or interesting or unique?
Not really. Like, I don't have a major process. The big thing is that I'm a huge procrastinator, just a massive procrastinator. And I find it very hard to write it without a deadline, which makes it hard to write when nothing's contracted or anything. That's why I love Nano. I've always loved Nano because it's an external deadline. Granted, there's nothing hanging in it because it's just yourself, but with the whole community doing it, you feel the pressure. And so I've written, I think, 4 or 5 novels at this point through Nano that I know I wouldn't have without Nano. And so even with Butts, once I had the idea for Butts, I was just kind of like, oh, this is fun. I think it's going to be funny. I need to figure it out, blah, blah, blah. But I don't know that I would have sat down to write it if I hadn't had the highlights deadline. I had to submit something for highlights, which made me do the 3 chapters that I had to submit, so I got that out there. Yeah, it's a bad, I don't know, is that a quirk or just a terrible habit? I'm not sure, but, so I really struggled to write without a deadline. So I need to figure out a way to get my way past that.
All right. When you were in the lowest parts of your journey, whenever that was for you, what do you think kept you going, and why did you stick to it?
It's just one of the things that's been, I've alluded to, the roller coaster of all the things, that, and each time I'm stubborn. I've always been stubborn. If you tell me I can't do it, of course, I'm going to think I want to prove you wrong. I'm going to prove you wrong. And so, so even though that thing, with the agent way back when was devastating, I'm like, no, I'm not going to let him win. I have to keep going. And, each rejection that came along, I was like, I believe in the story. I have to keep going, or I feel like I have some talent. I need to keep going. One of the big, continuing the roller coaster, in the summer of 2021, I ended up in the ER with heart issues. I had heart palpitation. I was having heart palpitation, and it got worse and worse and worse. And, so I went to my, GP, and she did the EKG, and she's like, you need to go to the emergency room right now. I was like, right now? She's like, should I call an ambulance for you? And it was literally across the road. I could have walked, much less driven. She's like, would you like me to call an ambulance? I'm like, wait, it's that bad? She's like, this is not good. You need to go to okay. I was like, oh, okay. And so, after, and all the testing and stuff, it was anxiety, Oh,
wow.
I mean, so I'm, it's one of the things you hear the opposite story. So many times people are having serious health issues, and all the doctors dismisses anxiety. And so mine was the opposite, that it was anxiety, and the doctor was like, what? But that summer I was preparing for my debut to come out in November. My first feature film was coming out in mid-October, and I was trying to write the second book, Battle of the Brains. And so I was doing all 3 of those at the same time. And I just So that was a super low point. I'm like, I don't know if I don't know if I want to keep doing this. If it's, I'm literally in the hospital.
Yeah.
And, I had, put me through I had, several weeks of tests, the echo and the wearing the heart monitor and all kinds of stuff before they're like, nah, anxiety. So it's like, I don't know that this is what I don't want to be like this. And so that was rough, but it was a kind of, I think, a rare storm of those 3 things coming together all at one time. got past it. I made it. And then, the happy times, the book comes out, the movie comes out, the second book is written and turned in, and then it's all happy. So you just got to figure out how the waves don't all happen at the same time. You just only get swamped and overwhelmed.
Do you feel like you made any mistakes along the way that you'd like to let listeners know? So maybe they can avoid making the same ones.
Yeah, I kind of already, I guess stepped on myself there because talk about, I queried too late. Most people say they query too early, and I definitely queried too late. I should have been pushing myself harder rather than just going in circles and circles and circles. So I think, it's just a big part of, I think the thing you need to do is find a community that can help you. You have the people you trust, read it and be like, yeah, you've done all you could do, get it out there, quit messing around. My dad always said, pee or get off the pot. So you just gotta do it. So, make sure you have the community that can support you and push you and listen to them. Cause I did have a community pushing me, but I was like, listen to the people who are telling you and have your best interests at heart. So
can you share with listeners one of the most important lessons that you learned on your journey to publication?
Definitely experiment with your writing. That was such a huge thing for me. Again, never did I think a picture book, especially never nonfiction. Nonfiction was never, I didn't read it when I was young. I was always a fiction girl, but because I was willing to, I had this idea and I was willing to just completely throw caution to the wind and try something new, and it worked out. And another thing I have done in the past that, there's the New York Midnight. They do all kinds of contests. And so they do these things every year, and you do have to pay an entry fee. So that's a little bit, it's a barrier for some people I know, but you get assigned to groups, and each group gets assigned like a genre, an object, and a location. And then you have to write either, you can enter for flash fiction, you can enter for a short story, which is longer, or you can enter for 100-word stories. And there was a big chunk of time I was entering those all the time. It was pushed me because I had to write a historical fiction. Never would I write a historical fiction. I wrote science fiction. Science fiction is not my thing, but I wrote a science fiction. And by pushing yourself and trying these new things, you discover strengths about yourself and your writing and weaknesses. I know historical fiction, not much genre. I can feel very confident now having tried it. And so I think because I did that, felt better about jumping to nonfiction once I had this idea, whereas I'm not sure I would have been brave enough to jump if I hadn't been experimenting with these other places before.
Interesting. I'm curious because I know they do the 24-hour film thing.
Yeah.
Done that as well.
I did the screenplay one year. I did their screenplay. I've never done the actual film one because I just I couldn't do that. But I did their screenplay one year. That was fun.
All right. This is not a business that most of us succeed in completely on our own. Who are some of the people who helped you along the way and how?
Well, first, shout out to my agent, Tracy Marchini, and then my editor at Running Press is Allison Cohen. They were both very supportive and amazing, especially getting butts and brains out. I don't know how I would have done it without them. My current writing group, we call ourselves the Sasukas, and it's Kathleen Fox, Rebecca Petrick, and Cami Kynard, and the four of us. We've been together for ages now, and we used to be a lot more, of course, before the pandemic. We got together about once a quarter for little weekend writing sessions and stuff. But they've been such an amazing support group. And then the Picture Book Scribblers and 24 for the Books were two different book groups I joined for getting my picture book out there. And 21 for the Books was a debut group, and then Picture Book Scribblers was a bunch of people at various different places. And it's been amazing supporting each other, read each other's books. And of course, my family. I definitely wouldn't have made it without my family. All of them is so supportive. Even my dad, when he thought I was absolutely bonkers for quitting my high-paying software job to write full time, he thought, "Oh boy, I got some lectures for that." But he still supported me anyway. He's such a big fan. And then my mom has always been my copy editor, reads everything, looking for every misplaced comma. And then my brother and sister also I'll read everything for me, but especially they're always there for the brainstorming, bouncing ideas section. So they all of them have been very, very supportive. So I certainly would not be here without them.
Wow. All right, Jocelyn, before you go, since we already heard about Battle of the Butts, can you tell us more about Battle of the Brains?
Yes. Once we had Battle of the Butts all worked out, it was we went back to Running for Kids to see what body part we wanted to work on next. And I submitted a proposal with several possibilities. And we decided it was best to go to the other end of the animal and go for brains. And so Battle of the Brains is about 10 animals with mind-blowing brain abilities. That was so fun. That was so fun to research because I had no idea. I mean, I know animals are incredible. I've always loved animals. I'm a huge animals girl, but reading about some of the studies and things they've discovered about these animals was just, I say mind-blowing because my mind was blown. It was amazing. And it was much harder to write than butts because for Battle of the Butts, you learn, okay, they do this, they have this thing they do, and they know why and they know how. So it's easy to write it. But with the brain stuff, it's just this whole thing about, the levels and and then what's intelligence versus kind of just habit and nature and, and trying to figure that out and why they do this. And is there something going on behind just rote processes and all this stuff? And it was, it's just so much more out there. And I could have easily, it was so hard to narrow it down to the 10 I included because there were so many more I wanted to include who do amazing things. But, I was trying to get into a nice balance of the different species and stuff. But yeah, it was so much fun to write. And not as funny. That was hard too because I wanted to be funny. And so I was always feeling that was where Allison came in and was my editor and was a total champion because I was always like, Allison, it's just not funny. It's not funny. And she's like, but it's so interesting. It's like a different kind of entertaining. Yeah. And so when I was feeling very down because I'm like, it's not funny. I can't figure out how to make it funny. And she's like, it doesn't matter. You're making it interesting. And that's what we're trying to do is make these facts interesting for kids. And so, she was huge at helping me through that challenge.
So what you're saying, which is really surprising, is that brains are more complicated than butts.
Right? And for some reason, they're less funny. Who would have guessed? Brains are less funny than butts. Yeah. So, no, I was going to say, but it's been interesting, going out and doing like visits with kids. Like I assume like every school visit I would do or every, interaction, they'd want me to read butts. What almost more when I do these like visits and stuff, almost more, it's about half and half. And the kids want to read about the brains and they're just absolutely fascinated by the brains. And I just figured it would just be 100% across the board, any school visit or if anything would be butts. But no, it's been about half and half. The kids really love learning about these animals too and how, they're the same and different. And I have been very surprised at the reception from the kids about how much they really are interested in the thinking processes of the animals.
All right, Jocelyn, thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing your story with everyone.
So thank you for having me. It's been so much fun.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Queries, Qualms, and Quirks. You can find the text of Jocelyn's query in the show notes, along with links to find out more about her and her books. If you enjoyed the show, I'd appreciate if you'd help me find new listeners by leaving a review, telling your friends, or sharing this episode on social media. If you're interested in supporting the show, go to patreon.com/Sarah Nicolas. That is Sarah with an H and Nicholas with no H. And if you're a published author interested in being a guest on the show, please click on the home base link in the description or go to sarahnicolas.com and click on the podcast logo in the sidebar. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you next time.